Barakatah Yahweh Yahweh Shai. Barakatah Yahweh Yahweh Shai. Barakatah Yahweh Yahweh Shai. Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Wa Barak Wa Rapah Wa Kazak. To the apostles, elders, and the brethren throughout the four corners, I say Shalom. Coming back at you with another lesson. The picture that you see on the screen is of a brother who was a slave from West Africa that was brought to Mexico, I believe in the Veracruz area. So this statue of this rugged looking brother, his name is Gaspar Yanga. And little is known about Gaspar Yanga because most of us here believe that the first successful slave rebellion was the rebellion of 1804, where the Haitian brothers beat the shit out the French and stomped the hell out of them and kicked them off the island of Haiti. But that wasn't the first successful black rebellion in the Western Hemisphere. If you want to say that Haiti uh, was the first black country to rid themselves of the rule of the so-called white man, whether they call themselves French, it was the French that was there in Haiti um, country, yeah, but it wasn't the first successful black uprising in the Western Hemisphere. 234 years before that was this brother, Gaspar Yanga. And this revolt took place down in Mexico, in which Mexico was called New Spain at that time. And they won their independence from Spain by fighting against the Spanish and created North America's first successful black town in Mexico. This is 234 years before 1804, but little is known about this. So, and the reason being that little is known about this, let me start off with a scripture. I'm gonna get Deuteronomy 32:7. It says, "Remember the days of old, consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will show thee thy elders, and they will tell thee." All right. Now, concerning black people here in North America, basically the so-called white man beat the Hebrew Israelite out of us. They beat it out of us over years and years and years of beating the hell out of us with scourges, which is a cat of nine tails, and at the ends of these whips, you could put pieces of glass, pieces of bone, or pieces of metal. So when you swing the whip, it's gonna dig into the skin and rip. So really, they beat it out of us. So any elders among us that knew the history of who we were, they were beaten, killed, boiled in oil. They did all types of very nasty things to us. But the so-called white man, his major weapon is deception. He's the master of deception. And there were so many slave revolts that were taking place in the Americas that Esau here on the mainland, whether on the mainland or in the Caribbean or in South America, they kept that information suppressed because if the slaves in the Caribbean was hearing about uprisings in South America and in North America, there were going to be uprisings. They were going to be dealing with uprisings on a daily basis because all it takes is one crazy nigga to start up, and then the rest is going to follow. Like in the movie Hoodlum, when they were talking about Bumpy Johnson coming uptown, and the I believe it was the prosecutor was speaking. I think he was talking to Dutch Schultz, or he was talking no, he was talking to Lucky Luciano. If one crazy nigga is willing to come uptown, then the rest of them is going to come. So he said something to the or lines of that.
I've got bodies all over the front page of the Daily News.
I got that Pansy Hoover calling me, asking if I need his help. You put my dick in the ringer, fella.
Dutch didn't instigate this.
Let me explain something to you. If one crazy Negro is provoked into coming downtown, they'll all come. I can't afford to have all of Harlem crossing the line because of you. You get this numbers thing settled, or I will launch an investigation into every syndicate activity in the city of New York. Do you get that? You wop pimp.
So Esau kept that information suppressed because he's the master of deception. So let me get another scripture, and then I'm gonna touch on the real quick. The scripture pops into my mind. Revelations, the 20th chapter. And read this, and then I'm gonna go into what I was going into. Revelations 20, Revelations 20 and 1. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a chain in his hand. Okay, that angel, that's Yahweh Shai. That angel that came down having the key of the bottomless pit in his hand, and the bottomless pit is Europe, because Europe has that lack of mineral resources, so it's like a bottomless pit. No matter how much you dig, you're not going to come up with any gold, uh, silver, onyx, whatever, copper, whatever you need. That's why they had to go out to other countries and get these different metals and different things had to be shipped in. And he laid hold on the dragon, which is talking about the so-called white man Esau, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. And that when he was bound 1,000 years was from about the time of 325 AD, let's say 324 AD, to about the time of about say 1353, or let's say within that time span, because around 1350, 1353, the eastern part of the Byzantine Empire was sacked by the Ottoman Turks, and the name was changed from Constantinople to Istanbul, Turkey. That was the eastern part of the empire. Also, around what 1347, 1350 was the bubonic and pneumonic plague that was plaguing all throughout Europe at that time, the Middle Ages. So 2/3 of the people were dead. Everywhere you went, 2 out of 3 people was dead. So that bottomless pit, when they came out the pit after that 1,000 years, had to be around say 1350, somewhere around there. Now, when they came out the bottomless pit, let me read what it says. And cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more. So when this devil was brought down for that 1,000 years, he couldn't deceive the nations no more. See, Esau's number one weapon, other than the ability to the sword, which is the ability to come up with creative ways of killing people. That's why they're always creating new bombs, new guns, new type of technology, uh, biological warfare. These are all weapons that they use for killing. Esau was that's his blessing, the sword. But also, not only is the sword his major weapon, deception is his major weapon. It says that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years were fulfilled. After he must be loosed a little season. So when he was loosed that little season from around that time up till now is that little season. So you're talking a little over 500 years that this devil's been on the loose, creating havoc. His little season. And when he was released, what did he do? He deceived the nations once more. See, he was shut up for 1,000 years that he couldn't deceive no more. But when he was loose for the little season, what did he do? Deceive the nations once more. So Esau's major weapon is deception. So let me go back here to the and open up with this article, which is called "North America's First Black Town" uh, by Henry Louis Gates Jr. You see him on PBS. He's the Harvard professor up there in Harvard, and he's talking about Gaspar Yanga, who created the first black town in North America. Okay, so let me start here. Let me try to get through it. It says, as I mentioned in my column about Juan Corrido, the first documented African to land in what is now the United States in 1513. As a student, I was under the impression that the first Africans arrived in North America 1619. See, that's what a lot of us think, that, basically Jamestown, Virginia, and so forth, that was it. But no, there was already Jakes that was brought here in slavery by the Spanish and the Portuguese. The Spanish and the Portuguese were the first ones in the slavery game. The British and the French, they came later. But the Spanish and the Portuguese, they were the first ones. And they were bringing slaves, Central America, South America, And Mexico's basically, if you want to say, a part of the mainland. Mexico's right there. They were bringing the slaves in those areas there, the Portuguese and the Spanish. So it says that the first Africans in North America in 1619, that was when 20 or so slaves from Angola ended up at Jamestown, Virginia. Nothing could be further from the truth. As a matter of fact, by 1620, when the Mayflower landed, about 500,000 Africans had already been shipped as slaves to the New World. In other words, those first 20 Africans who arrived in Virginia had a lot of company further to the south, starting in Florida. So you're talking a half a million Jakes was already here in the Americas before 1620 Jamestown, Virginia. You know what I'm saying? Before the Mayflower. Okay, so let me read on. It says, and many of the first African slaves who arrived in the New World before 1620 landed in Mexico. So Mexico was like the prime place where a lot of slaves was being brought to. It says, which is a surprise to most of us living in the United States. By 1570, the year that a slave named Gaspar Yanga fled to the mountains near Vera Cruz to escape slavery, the colony of New Spain, Mexico was called New Spain at that time, had received an estimated 36,500 Africans. These Africans, these are Israelites. These aren't Africans, these are Israelites, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, that were in West Africa, that were brought over on slave ships. The historian Herman Burnett tells us in his book Africans in Colonial Mexico, of which 20,000 had survived. Moreover, by 1600, Bennett concludes the number of Africans collectively rivaled, if not outnumbered, Spaniards throughout New Spain, Mexico, and at Vera Cruz. Persons of African descent constituted 63% of the non indigenous population. By 1810, Bennett continues, free blacks numbered approximately 624,000, or 10% of the total population. Bennett correctly observes that the fact that Mexico by this time was home to the second largest slave and the largest free black population may have come as a revelation to those unaccustomed to thinking of Mexico as a prominent site of the African presence. Most Americans will find these facts astonishing. I know that I did when I first learned of them. Basically, I'm reading, this is a column that or paper that Louis Gates wrote. I'm gonna keep reading on because the article's not that long. Mexico's African population traditionally was concentrated along its two coasts, one around the port of Veracruz, where most of the slaves landed on the Gulf of Mexico, and the other was a district known as Costa Chica on the Pacific Ocean near Acapulco. And it was near Veracruz that the first black ruled town was granted its status as a self governing municipality by Spain in 1609, which is, that's still about 200 years before 1804. This is this will have to be probably the first successful black rebellion in the Americas, and this is some 200 and some odd years before 1804. Um, it says 11 years before the Mayflower. So 11 years before the Mayflower landed in 1620, these Jakes had a free black town or city in Mexico. This is before the Mayflower even landed here. Okay, 11 years before the Mayflower, it is called Yanga, and a large statue of its founder graces the town square today. There's a large statue in the town square of this brother, and his name is Gaspar Yanga. It says the town of Yanga is named after for Mexico's most famous runaway slave, Gaspar Yanga, which a lot of people don't know about Gaspar Yanga, whom the historian Jane Landers tells us in her book Slaves, Subjects, and Subversives. Blacks in colonial Latin America was an enslaved West African of the Brand Nation. In 1570 or so, Yanga escaped from his enslavement near Veracruz and formed a palenque, a community of runaway slaves or Maroons in the mountains nearby at Cofre de Peralta. Yanga's Palenque survived initially for almost 40 years, raiding Spanish convoys along the Real or Royale Road to Ciudad Mexico, Mexico City, and nearby haciendas. So all of this history right here, the so-called white man basically suppressed this and hid this because, of course, you don't want the other slaves to know that you had slaves that was carrying power, that was fighting back, because there was going to be more rebellions. So Esau kept that shit on a hush. They was not allowing that. They was not allowing that to be known. And another thing about the so-called white man, it don't matter whether they call themselves British, French, Spanish, Portuguese, American. You're all a bunch of goddamn Edomites. You're all Edomites. All right? And what Esau does is he hides himself among the different nations and takes on that name and identity to himself. Portugal and Spain was ruled by the Moors for over 700 years. 1492, the city of Granada was brought down, so the Moors were brought down and put into slavery. Edom got up in there, okay, into Spain and Portugal and took over. They took over in the nobility, and then they took those Moors, those Jakes, who are nothing more than Israelites that converted to the religion of Islam anyway, and they started sending them on slave ships over here. They put them in captivity. All right. So, but under that, they took on the name of Spanish and took on the name of Portuguese. In France, there was Negroes that was in France. The so-called white man Edom went up in there. He married up into the black nobility and pushed the darker ones out. And then he put Jake in slavery there. Jake was in power in France too. So this is what this man does. So I want to touch on this scripture here because what he likes to do is he's trying to hide from that name of being Edom. But you're not going to get away from it. You're not getting away from it, Esau. You're the devil that the Bible speaks of. Let me get the book of here, Jeremiah, 23. Jeremiah 23. Just going to read a couple scriptures and finish this article out. 23 and 24. It says, can any hide himself in secret places that I shall not find him, saith the Lord power? Do not I fill heaven and earth, saith the Lord power? So this is a question. The Most High is saying, can anybody hide himself in secret places? Because see, that's what the so-called white man is doing. He's done hid himself among these different nations. So everybody, you calling them either British or Spanish, Portuguese, French, or American, or they're down in South America. They're down there in Venezuela, in different areas, talking about, oh, they're Venezuelan. You got Edomites that's down there in South Africa talking about they're South African, but they're Edomites. Whether they're under the name the Dutch, they're calling themselves, oh, they're South African. And that's the land of Ham. You're not Hamites. So the scriptures say, can any hide himself in secret places that I shall not see him? See, just because you've hidden yourself among these different nations and you're trying to cloak yourself and you're trying to convince the world that the Edomites are long gone, they don't exist no more, that's a goddamn lie. See, the Most High has searched you out. We have searched you out through the power of Yahweh Bashem Yahushua, and the Most High has revealed your ass. Can any hide himself in secret places that I shall not see him, saith the Lord power? Do not I fill heaven and earth, saith the Most High? So this is a question. So let me hit another scripture. I'm gonna go back to the article. So let me I'm gonna read here Jeremiah, the 49th chapter. And 49 and 10. But I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. You see that? But I have made Esau bare. I have uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. So you can't hide yourself no more, Esau, Edom. The jig is up, okay? Okay, the jig is up. You red, hairy, goddamn bastards. The jig is up on who you are. And information upon information is coming out on everything. So now let me go back here to this article, finish this out. So where did I leave off here? Right, I'm down over here. Okay. By 1609, the Spanish authorities had had enough. The Viceroy, Luis de Velasco II, mounted a major assault on the settlement, but to no avail. Under the leadership of an Angolan named Francisco de la Matosa, Yanga and his compatriots successfully defended themselves and then negotiated a settlement with the Spanish. So the Spanish was tired of being raided by these jakes because of Yanga's Palenque, the Palenque that he started, which is a community of runaway slaves or Maroons. So this Palenque that Gaspar Yanga had started, they was giving Spain all kind of hell there in New Spain, which was Mexico. So they said, enough. We're gonna quell this thing. But they couldn't do nothing with these. They couldn't do nothing with these brothers. These brothers was giving them the business. So they had to negotiate a settlement with them. And this is the settlement. I'm gonna read down into that. It says, I'm gonna read this again. By 1609, the Spanish authorities had had enough. The Viceroy Luis de Velasco II mounted a major assault on the settlement, but to no avail. Under the leadership of an Angolan named Francisco de la Matosa, Yanga and his compatriots successfully defended themselves and then negotiated a settlement with the Spanish. Their demands included 11 conditions. Landers tells us among these freedom for all of the runaway slaves who had lived in the settlement before 1608, official recognition of the town's sovereignty, including the right of Yanga and his heirs to become governors, exclusion of the Spanish except on market days, and a Roman Catholic church administered by Franciscan monks in return. Yanga agreed to pay tribute to the Spanish and to serve the king militarily when asked. They also agreed to return future slaves if paid for returning them. But subsequent complaints from the Spanish suggest that the town continued to be a haven for runaway slaves. In other words, that's something that Yang and them said, listen, we'll return a slave back if you're going to pay us for him. But that was bullshit because they was basically, once you came amongst them, you were staying amongst them. They wasn't going to sell you or give you back to the Spanish. That was some bullshit they just put in there for them. They were bullshitting. Okay, they bullshitted them on that one. And that's exactly what that was. It says Yanga and his followers established the town of San Lorenzo de los Negros. So the town of San Lorenzo de los Negros, also called San Lorenzo de Cerralvo, is the same thing as San Lorenzo de los Negros in 1609. And it was formally recognized by the Spanish in 1618. Landers quotes an Italian visitor in 1697, commentating that San Lorenzo was so full of black people that it would make anyone think they were in Guinea, now called Yanga, after its founder. The town exists to this day in the state of Veracruz. So that's the history on this brother Gaspar Yanga in North America's first free black town. They gained independence from the Spanish in 1609. And it started in 1570, where they were giving them the business from 1570 to 1609. That's basically 39 years of hell they was giving the Spaniards until the Spaniards had to just make a negotiation and like, we're just going to fall back off you and leave you alone. But that's a little known fact here in North America. So I'm going to read one more scripture and close this out. So I'm gonna get the book here of book, yeah, I want the book of Job. Job 8:8. For inquire, I pray thee, of the former age, and prepare thyself for the search of their fathers. For we are but of yesterday, and knowing nothing, because our days upon earth are a shadow. So I'm just gonna conclude this lesson right here. And with that, I hope brothers was edified. And with that, I'm gonna say shalom.